Sony has been very quiet regarding the PlayStation 5. Most likely, they have a lot of things they want to spring on people that they hope come as a surprise. But the fact is, if you've been paying attention, there are already quite a few things you can know about this console that set it apart by more than just a generation. Possibly even some things that none of us have thought about. Hi folks, it's Falcon, and today on gameranx, let's talk about how Sony is planning something different for the PlayStation 5.
Well, let's just go ahead and say something. Sony is looking at everything differently. Sony CEO Kenichiro Yoshida, he had the following to say. If you look at the game industry as a whole, the console market is not a major market. Rather, it's a niche market, if you will. But for core gamers, immersive experiences are something we would like to value. In this respect, for the time being, the console as something that brings about computing functionality to the users is very important. But on the other hand, technology will progress, and so, as I said today, the Remote Play and PlayStation Now and other streaming services will be worked on in parallel, and that is what we are doing at this moment. Now, some of this might be a little bit alarming sounding on account. Console gaming is actually, at the moment, not necessarily a niche market. Is it as big as the PC gaming market at the moment? I mean, it depends on which developer you're talking about. It's a much more nuanced answer than yes or no, but console gaming at the moment is a high-dollar item. Whether or not it's technically the niche, the fact that they're looking at it this way is very, very interesting. Now, before you go ahead and say, oh, they're abandoning the console market, there's another thing that Yoshida said as he was talking about this, which is that because it is a niche market, they want to aim primarily at what they're calling hardcore gamers. Now, what executives call hardcore gamers and what hardcore gamers call hardcore gamers are not necessarily the same thing. However, what they're indicating is they believe their core business is built around the specific interests of what they believe to be hardcore gamers. Now, this involves a lot of market research, and there's a good chance they've spoken to a lot of people who call themselves hardcore gamers, and what they really intend to do, niche or mainstream, big market or small, is cater to that profile they've generated that they're calling hardcore gamer. Now, Yoshida has also said that next-gen PlayStation hardware is a necessity, or necessary. It's something they have to do. This was a while back, but it sits in pretty well with the idea that they're trying to serve a very specific market that maybe isn't ready to move over to the full streaming services of something like a Google Stadia or the xCloud offering that Microsoft is working on, or even PlayStation's streaming service that they're in the process of working on as well, and that they believe that it's going to be completely necessary to have the hardware locally for at least one more generation. Now, putting this in line with the niche comments that he's made more recently, it makes sense. They may be expecting a lot more people to be playing Assassin's Creed in their browser in maybe 5-10 years, but the people who move to that are probably not going to be the hardest of hardcore gamers, and I'm not saying that as an insult in any way, but somebody who plays games as like a primary hobby that they intend to get very good, or even in a lot of cases professionally, do not like streaming lag. You get latency no matter what. It's not possible to not have latency, but having hardware locally ensures that you're not depending on any outside factors. You can predict that latency. You know exactly what you're getting at pretty much all times. And with local hardware, you'll more or less be able to at least predict, get used to, and minimize input latency. That's not necessarily something you can do with a streaming service, as the internet, especially in the United States, is not that great. Comparatively speaking, other countries have internet way better than the United States, and the primary user base of the console will be in the United States. Now, these demographics are absolutely changing, as in China, streaming is becoming a much bigger gaming platform. However, we're just not there in the US. The infrastructure just isn't there. There are large swaths of the United States that are actually still on dial-up internet, and I think that there's going to be a very specific push towards those types of people. You don't necessarily have to live in a big city with great internet to play games well. With streaming services, you basically would be stuck with that situation because your input lag would probably be totally trash in a lot of rural areas. Now, understanding these things, I think we've got probably one of the more interesting things to bring up here. Sony Worldwide Studios chairman Sean Layden has said some of Sony's first-party multiplayer titles may not actually be PlayStation exclusive. But we also have to understand that, let's say we talk about Microsoft. They own Minecraft, and Minecraft is on every platform they can get it on because they know that's what Minecraft's business is. If they made Minecraft an Xbox exclusive, I think their base would just become extremely limited because the game itself is not the kind of game that people would buy a console for. Instead, it's kind of a more social game in a lot of respects, especially if you get a good server going. As Sony is looking into the idea of live services, I'm sure that they're probably thinking, well, if we do that, it's probably not a good idea to limit ourselves to our own console. Which, that said, what they run the risk of doing is turning the PlayStation brand, or indeed the other brands, Xbox and so on, into simple changes in experience that present us all of the same software. The Nintendo Switch, for instance, is something that provides something entirely unique, and that's why it's doing so well. If Sony doesn't present us unique things, if it's literally basically just a developer/publisher now, I mean, remember that deal that they unveiled with Microsoft in which they're actually going to be outsourcing a lot of their work as far as their streaming service over to Microsoft's xCloud division? If that's the case, a lot of people might be asking, what's the point? And again, this returns us back to the idea that console gaming will be treated as a niche market. They get exactly what they're doing. As the overall gaming community and platforms open up, Sony still understands that they're going to be serving a specific market in a certain way as long as they can, because that's going to be the way they want to play it. And that is why they are aiming for who they're aiming for with this. Sean Layden also said that he wants fewer, bigger PlayStation games. This is where I think the most important stuff comes in. There are 13 internal development studios in PlayStation's brand. Aside from the live services, the actual God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn type games, he wants to pull back the developers' capacity so that they're working on these games longer, making better games, getting more both commercial and critical acclaim, and providing definite, specific reasons to buy a PlayStation, which is exactly what anybody who would buy a PlayStation, or really any game console, ultimately wants. And here we're talking single-player games, games that are an experience, games that have a beginning, a middle, and an end, games that give you feelings and make you think and challenge you and push you. Not that competitive games are bad, but a single-player game that is exclusive to a platform is a reason to buy that platform. And it's my opinion that this is a good strategy to absolutely make these high-effort, high-budget, high-energy games, spending a little bit more per game, making a little bit less games, making their money back and selling consoles. That's a good strategy. In a lot of ways, it's kind of a doubling down on the PlayStation 4 strategy. The exclusives we got on the PlayStation 4 have been friggin' gold. Between, like I said, God of War, Horizon Zero Dawn, and Spider-Man, we've really just gotten some of the more amazing titles exclusive to the PlayStation this generation. Speaking of Spider-Man, Sony actually bought Insomniac Games because that game performed so damn well, and that makes perfect sense. Again, they're trying to figure out good reasons for people to have a PlayStation exclusively, and a developer like Insomniac Games is absolutely a good reason for that. Now, all of this does show quite a bit of savvy as to where games are actually going. In theory, things aren't going to be a lot different for the near future, but in the far future, maybe a decade from now, the games industry probably isn't going to look a damn thing like it does right now. And in that respect, Sony really has a good thing going with the PlayStation 5 if it lives up to everything they're talking about. Between the fact that their live services are not going to be exclusives, to the fact that they are going to be doing backwards compatibility to make the transition between PlayStation 4 and 5 seamless as it possibly can be. Buying a new console won't just isolate you in this case, it'll actually be a continuation of where they are right now on PlayStation, but with better graphics, which is great. And whatever the next step is, it seems like they're prepared for it. However, we do also have to understand that them concentrating harder on fewer single-player games does mean there is going to be fewer single-player games, which does suck, and I hope that we don't get into an area of swan-songing the single-player game with the PlayStation 5, but we'll see. At this point, I think we have a decent idea of what Sony's thinking, but until we get a lot more hard information out of them, we can't be sure. What are you expecting on the PlayStation 5? Leave us a comment, let us know what you think, and if you like this video, please click like. If you're not subscribed, now's a great time to do so. We upload brand new videos every day of the week, and the best way to see them first is, of course, a subscription. So click subscribe and don't forget to click the notification bell. As always, we thank you very much for watching this video. I'm Falcon. You can follow me on Twitter at Falcon the Hero, and we'll see you next time right here on GameRanx.